Live from southern Israel, this is BBC News. More patients are dying in Gaza's main hospital because of shortages of water and power and ongoing fighting. Aid groups say ongoing gun battles make evacuation extremely dangerous as vulnerable babies wait to be transferred. 6 have already died.
And I'm Catherine Biarahanga in London, bringing you the rest of the headlines from the UK and around the world. Here in the UK, a cabinet reshuffle is underway as Suella Braverman is sacked as Home Secretary after criticising the police. And in a surprise move, former Prime Minister David Cameron is back in government as the new Foreign Secretary.
Welcome to BBC News. We're coming to you live from southern Israel, close to the Gaza Strip, about 3 kilometers away, where we've heard the continuing airstrikes over Gaza by Israeli planes that have been circling overhead as well, actually increased air activity today, and mortar fire also incoming, as well as outgoing artillery fire. It's been quite a busy morning here. That's what we've been hearing from this position, but down inside Gaza, that is now the focal point of the fighting around Al-Shifa Hospital, which is Gaza's largest hospital, which is barely operational now, and where the Hamas-run health ministry is saying that 6 babies are now have now died inside the Al-Shifa hospital because of the incubators in the neonatal unit losing power amidst heavy strikes and amidst damage to the infrastructure at Al-Shifa. Now, a doctor at Al-Shifa has pleaded for the remaining babies to be taken to safety in Egypt. Around 2,000 people are reported to be trapped inside the medical facility, which Israel says conceals underground Hamas tunnels, though doctors deny this. There is growing concern about the dire state of all hospitals in Gaza. This map shows hospitals inside the Gaza Strip. The UN says 20 out of 36 are no longer working. The biggest, Al-Shifa, is not functioning as a hospital according to the World Health Organization, but we understand some medical services are still attempting to function. There are reports that Gaza's second biggest hospital, Al-Quds, has run out of fuel. It is now more than 5 weeks since Hamas led that surprise attack on Israel, the deadliest attack in Israel's history, killing around 1,200 people and taking almost 240 hostage. Hamas, which is designated as a terrorist organization by many governments around the globe, including the United Kingdom, says that more than 11,000 people have died as a result of Israel's huge military retaliation. Our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman has all the very latest.
Explosions and flares light up the sky over Gaza. The war is closing in on the north, where the Israeli army says it has all but encircled Gaza City. At the main hospital, Al-Shifa, the World Health Organization calls the situation dire and perilous. With the power out, it says it's not functioning as a hospital anymore. The BBC has been sent pictures of newborn babies being kept in a surgical theatre. There are 36, say doctors, desperately needing help. 3 premature babies have now died, they say, since the neonatal intensive care unit stopped functioning.
Without electricity, without fuel, without water, even without food, and still we are having more than 600 injured people, and we are suffering now with our babies. I'm afraid that we are going to lose all of these babies. We appeal that we would like to move these babies to the outside Gaza, to Egypt, to keep them alive.
The Israeli military has said it is ready to help evacuate the babies to another hospital, but this hasn't happened. Experts say they'd also need specialist medical kit to move them while there's fighting raging around the hospital. The Israeli army released video of soldiers leaving 15 jerry cans of fuel for the hospital, but staff say that would power it for less than an hour. Israel accuses Hamas of using the hospital and tunnels under it as a command centre. Hamas and the hospital have denied that. In Israel, the vigils go on for nearly 240 hostages being held by Hamas, including children and the elderly. And some here say getting them out must be the priority.
Of course, the Hamas needs to be taken down, okay? But the question of how to do it is also a significant question. And before I want to kill one single terrorist, I want each and every one of these people home.
Talk of a possible deal to release some in exchange for a break in the fighting goes on, but previous hopes of a major breakthrough didn't materialize. Amid the spiralling civilian death toll in Gaza, the Israeli leader, in a US interview, rejected a UN claim that Israel was carrying out collective punishment of Palestinians.
I can say that what the commissioner said is hogwash, because the main difference is, are you deliberately targeting civilians? No, we're deliberately doing everything in our power to target the terrorists, and the civilians, as happens in every legitimate war, are sometimes what are called collateral damage.
In Gaza, during a brief pause on Sunday, thousands more people fled the Israeli offensive. The Red Cross says an unbearable human tragedy is unfolding in front of our eyes. For the children of Shifa Hospital, who never chose this fight, time could be running out. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Tom, there with the latest on the ground in Gaza and at Al-Shifa Hospital, which has become really the focus of the fighting, but also the focus of the claim and counterclaim between the Israeli and Palestinian side over what exactly is happening inside that hospital. Well, for more on the situation on the ground, I spoke a little earlier to Bushra Khalidi, who is a policy lead at Oxfam in the West Bank, and she spoke to us live from Ramallah.
Well, I mean, time is not running out. Time has run out. I think time has run out when 3 newborn babies in incubators have died because they can't get the oxygen they need and they can't get the electricity they need to run incubators for newborns. Mothers are giving birth in appalling conditions. Babies are being born and then they're fleeing south because they're being forcibly expelled. We heard yesterday of a newborn child and a mother that had just given birth and she had to walk 15 kilometers to the south with a newborn baby. We also heard of a child dying on that road because of conditions and because of different reasons, but dying in the arms of his father while they're walking down to the south. Shifa Hospital is no longer operating. This is not, even if we think that it's operating, this is no longer operational. This is not a way a hospital should be operating. And, we have to talk about proportionality. If the government of Israel says it's doing everything in its power to prevent attacks on civilians, and that 10,000, almost 12,000 people are collateral damage, 4,000 children, is that an okay and proportionate response as a collateral damage? 4,000 children killed?
You mentioned...
I mean, we need to review, just a second, we need to review and understand really what is the end goal here and how much do Gazans have to endure. The situation at the hospital, we have heard that dogs are eating on dead bodies. This is how graphic the situation is at Shifa Hospital.
You talked there about how extraordinarily difficult it is for people to evacuate south from Shifa Hospital. And then the babies. I mean, if it is hard enough for people to take the road as they walk south, how feasible is it that an evacuation corridor could be set up for those babies in conjunction or controlled by the Israeli military?
I mean, the babies have already died. 3 babies have already died, and that corridor is still not up. Those humanitarian pauses are still not functioning. Yesterday, 15 people died in Khan Yunis in the south. So it's just, this idea that there are places that are safe in Gaza, that there are safe routes for people to take and to find a safe haven. That's not true. It is not the case. The safe route is not safe, and safe havens in the south are not safe, and nor is the north. So where are people? Yeah.
Can I, sorry to interrupt, there's a slight delay on the line, Bushra. Can I ask you about, last week we heard that the Israeli government was going to announce humanitarian pauses, tactical pauses as they put it, in some areas in order to achieve aid or to reach aid. Have your teams on the ground seen that happening and seen any improvement in terms of reaching the little aid that is available?
No, absolutely not. We have not seen any improvement. If anything, the situation is deteriorating by the hour. What is a 4-hour pause? What does that even mean? How are we supposed to evacuate almost 3,000 patients from Al-Shifa hospitals in 4 hours to the south? I mean, there's not even enough medical teams and ambulances to do this. This needs days. And it's not just about humanitarian pauses to evacuate people. It's also to bring medical teams in. People are exhausted. They have been working around the clock with no supplies, with no proper equipment, with no fuel, with flashlights on their phone, operating outside on the floor of hospitals. I mean, this is not a pause is not going to fix this. This is a complete tragedy to see people, patients, doctors having to make the decision of whether to flee to the south with their families or stay in the hospital with patient is no choice that any doctor should have to make. We heard of patients being shot, that were shot yesterday by Israeli snipers inside the hospital. Why is somebody that is quadriplegic being shot in the abdomen by an Israeli sniper inside a hospital? There needs to be an immediate ceasefire. That is the only solution to prevent more loss and more people, Palestinians, killed by Israeli airstrikes.
The dire situation on the ground there evoked by Bushra Khalidi from Oxfam, joining us from the occupied West Bank. Well, even though, of course, the focus is very much still on Gaza, the fear, of course, continues to grow about an escalation of this conflict into the wider region. Again, there has been more cross-border fire between Israel and Lebanon this morning, with the Israeli forces accusing the Lebanese of firing mortars into northern Israel, and Israel responding with artillery fire, the worst violence across that border now since 2006. Well, for more on that, a little earlier we joined our correspondent Hugo Bashega, who was speaking to us from Beirut.
So violence continued along the border on the weekend, and yesterday Hezbollah said it had carried out a number of attacks targeting Israeli positions in northern Israel, and the Israeli military said 2 civilians and 7 soldiers were injured as a result of those attacks. And this morning the Israeli military said there were 2 attacks from Lebanese territory, and that the Israeli military was responding to those attacks. And for weeks we've been talking about those cross-border attacks that have been carried out by groups here in southern Lebanon, including Hezbollah and the Israeli military. And on Saturday, we heard from Hassan Nasrallah, the influential leader of Hezbollah. He made his second speech since the war between Israel and Hamas started. And again, he didn't make any major announcement. He didn't give any major indication of what Hezbollah is planning to do. But he did say that those attacks from southern Lebanon are going to continue. And he said Hezbollah was using more powerful missiles and was also targeting positions deeper inside Israel. So I think this shows how tense the situation is. And shortly after that speech, we heard from the Israeli defense minister, who said that Hezbollah was making a mistake, was dragging Lebanon into this conflict. And he said that what the Israeli military was doing in Gaza could do here in Beirut.
Hugo Bashega in Beirut on the continuing cross-border fire there. Well, in terms of actually the war itself in Gaza, the Israeli military have released some statistics. They say that they have struck 4,000, they have made 4,300 airstrikes since this conflict began. They have struck, in their words, around 300 tunnel shafts of Hamas and targeted 3,000 terrorist infrastructure sites. Those figures coming to us from the Israeli Defense Forces as the conflict continues and intensifies. We will continue to bring you all the latest from this region. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
To choose Grana Padano is to embrace its unique Italian values. A moment to be shared. Grana Padano, an Italian feeling.
We empower those who act, those who see the correlation between predictability and probability, those who manage risk by anticipating each movement, flawless execution, timing, and accuracy. Identify the goal, match power with precision, reach new heights. CME Group, where risk meets opportunity.
The world is changing around us, and it's changing fast. On Future Earth, we'll investigate the biggest climate stories of our time, and we'll analyze why they matter. And we'll reveal the actions you can take to help protect our planet.
Join Carl Nasman for Future Earth on BBC News.
You're live with BBC News. Now, here in the UK, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has been sacked. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, asked her to leave the government and is considering a ministerial reshuffle. He's been under pressure to sack Ms Braverman after a weekend in which she's been accused of emboldening far-right activists who carried out violence on the streets of London. These are the latest pictures of Ms Braverman as she left for work this morning amid speculation over her job. The opposition Labour Party has accused her of stoking tensions this weekend by claiming the police were biased. Ms Braverman will be replaced as Home Secretary by James Cleverly, who was Foreign Secretary. And in a surprise move, Mr Cleverly is being replaced as Foreign Secretary by the former Prime Minister David Cameron. He will take up a place in the House of Lords in order to fulfil his new role. Suella Braverman became an MP in 2015 and had been a Home Secretary since October 2022, serving under Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. She stood for the Conservative Party leadership after Boris Johnson resigned and has made no secret of her ambitions to be leader. She now returns to the backbenches. Our political correspondent, Helen Catt, looks back at her political career.
She's the daughter of migrants who put taking a tough line on immigration at the centre of her agenda as Home Secretary. Suella Braverman inherited the government's flagship policy of sending illegal arrivals to Rwanda, but it's one she wholeheartedly embraced. She was also a leading voice pushing for curbs on all migration and was prepared to say bluntly what she believed.
Where individuals are being persecuted, it is right that we offer sanctuary. But we will not be able to sustain an asylum system if, in effect, simply being gay or a woman or fearful of discrimination in your country of origin is sufficient to qualify for protection.
Originally given the job of Home Secretary by Liz Truss, 6 weeks later, Ms Braverman was out of the picture. She'd broken the ministerial code by emailing a document to someone who shouldn't have seen it, and she resigned. When the new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak reappointed her just a week later, it was controversial.
Was his Home Secretary right to resign last week for a breach of security?
The Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognised that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake.
Ms Braverman stayed popular with the right of the party, but there were increasing concerns about her choice of language.
The wind of change that carried my own parents across the globe in the 20th century was a mere gust compared to the hurricane that is coming.
She clashed with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley over pro-Palestine protests in London and caused a backlash when she said sleeping rough in tents was sometimes a lifestyle choice.
Suella Fernandez.
It was in 2015 that Ms Braverman, then Suella Fernandez, first entered the Commons. A Brexiteer, she quit as Brexit Minister over concerns about Theresa May's version of the withdrawal agreement, but later joined the Cabinet as Boris Johnson's Attorney General. And in 2021, she became the first Cabinet Minister to take maternity leave after a change in the law was rushed through to allow it. She never hid her ambition, though, for the top job, asked if she'd run for leader here before her boss had actually resigned.
I'll be straight with you, Robert. Yes, I will.
In the resulting contest, she came sixth, but suspicions swirled that her punchy style was in part about setting the ground for another run.
It's the Guardian reading, tofu eating, wokarati, dare I say, the anti-growth coalition that we have to thank for the disruption that we are seeing on our roads today.
For now, Suella Braverman will return to the backbenches. It seems unlikely, though, that she'll do it quietly. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, for more analysis on this, let's go live now to Westminster and our UK political correspondent, Rob Watson. Rob, let's just take a step back. This isn't simply the sacking of a senior minister. Why is this such a big political story?
It's a huge political story for all sorts of reasons, Catherine, and I should say that I've been covering British politics for 30-odd years or so, and even by the recent standards of turmoil, this is a pretty dramatic day. But to sort of get to the nub of your question, I mean, I think the reason that she's gone is because Rishi Sunak kind of considers that this sort of populist right-winger is just more of a liability than an asset. But I think why it really matters is the way it's going to be seen in judging the direction of the governing Conservative Party, because the way that Downing Street are trying to portray this is the Conservatives moving beyond the Brexit wars, trying to have a more united party. But I mean, interestingly, the reaction from the right of the Conservative Party is to say, hang on a minute, what is this old Remainer, David Cameron, doing coming back? So, I mean, there is a big danger that rather than uniting the party, that it is seen as an attempt, if you like, to move it away from the right more into the centre, and that there will be a reaction to that. We're already seeing it. I think one senior Conservative described the return of David Cameron as a coup, was the word he used, and said that the Remainers have won. So you can sort of see the turmoil, and you can see why this is such a big deal, and that it goes beyond the fate of one minister in the form of Suella Braverman. Sorry for the long answer.
No, but thank you for that answer. And our viewers around the world will, of course, know David Cameron, the former UK Prime Minister, as you say. Why do you think Rishi Sunak is bringing him back so close to elections that we expect to happen at some point next year?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. I think it's partly an attempt to reach out to people who voted Remain in the 2016 referendum, and who are more sort of seen on the sort of centre of the Conservatives' appeal out there. They've lost an awful lot of those voters. I guess he's also bringing him back as to show that he is capable of making bold moves, and I think he's also bringing him back because of what he would see as his extensive experience. But my goodness, I mean, it is an immensely a risky strategy by anybody's standards, because, you know, David Cameron has a lot of political baggage. There are many in the Conservatives who think he's too pro-China. There are many out in the country who are absolutely furious with him for what they see as the absolute chaos that his holding a referendum on Europe has caused. And of course, there's also the issue post his time as Prime Minister, when he was caught up in a sort of lobbying scandal. So this is by no means some sort of risk-free, the easy option appointment.
And Rob, obviously, David Cameron was the Conservative Prime Minister who began this more than a decade-long stay in power that we've seen from the Conservative Party. It's shaping up to be quite, a challenging election for the Conservatives. What are their chances looking like at the moment?
Well, if the opinion polls are anything to go by, Catherine, they are in deep trouble. And it was interesting you brought up the issue of the 13 years, because in many ways that is the sort of the force of political gravity that the Conservatives are up against. And whether their record was great or terrible, or, one could have an opinion about that, it's the 13 years in office. And that is why, everyone here at Westminster gets very excited about things like reshuffles, and there'll be a budget statement next week. But I think if you sort of draw back from it, you can't help feeling, if you look at the kind of the depth of the trouble that the Conservatives are in the polls, that there's probably not much that Rishi Sunak can do, and that, short of some sort of miraculous economic recovery or the main opposition Labour Party imploding, things like these sort of reshuffles are going to be seen more, one thinks, as sort of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic in a political sense.
Exactly. Thank you very much. That's our political correspondent, Rob Watson, speaking to us live from Westminster. Now, in Australia, an amateur cricketer is basking in national attention after pulling off a miraculous victory for his team in the last over of a one-day match. Gareth Morgan's Mujarrabah team was facing defeat at the weekend when Surfers Paradise needed just 5 runs to win with 6 batters available. To everyone's shock, Morgan claimed 6 wickets with the 6 balls remaining in the match. Well, earlier I spoke to the man of the moment, Gareth Morgan. He told me why he decided to bowl when he was so close to defeat.
I've got some young guys in my team, and a few of them had been bowling pretty well. One in particular But the batsmen, they looked like they started to have his measure, and they'd been hitting a few clean balls. And I didn't think that he had bowled so well to then deserve to be hit for those winning runs that looked like they were just going to happen. Didn't think there was much we could do to stop it. So I thought I'll take that responsibility. They can hit him off me rather than the young fella, because he's bowled well and doesn't deserve that.
And what's your reaction to the national attention you're getting because of your victory?
I did not expect this. When I got up and went to cricket on Saturday, I didn't expect that my day on Monday would be full of talking to media outlets. And now on the other side of the world, it's unbelievable.
That was Gareth Morgan on being celebrated in Australia for his sporting success. You're watching BBC News with me, Catherine Biarahanga. Stay with us here. We're going to have the latest business news in just a short moment. And you can go to the BBC website, bbcnews.com, for all the latest headlines.